Dan, how are you? Thanks for the time today.
Good afternoon. I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We're doing fine, Dan. It's been a hell of a week here, obviously, and we know that, from everyone in the NFL, this has been a tough subject to deal with, a tough subject to even talk about, and you are one that didn't even do the thoughts and prayer. You actually said a prayer today on TV, so I can tell this is something that's certainly affecting you a lot as well. How are you handling all this and finding it in terms of your job here, which is commentating on the NFL and the Patriots and certain things, and something big like this sort of comes along? How's that been for you?
Yeah, I'd say I'm like so many people that kind of was witnessing what happened Monday, at least relatively shortly after, just constantly waiting, checking television or checking social media, to see that one either breaking news statement or tweet, that there is some sign of great news. I know that there's improved news and positive news coming off of last night for Damar, but I think a real challenging thing for a lot of guys that were a part of the NFL either now or, in the past is it's such a small group of guys. And I think that, and I said this yesterday on TV, like the bond and the relationship that you build with your teammates is different to every single one that you have in your life outside of like your wife or your husband, your spouse. And, it's just very unique, and you go through and experience so many things that, when the word family gets thrown around, it's not necessarily a cliche. Like they feel like family, and when you see Damar experience that, you're like, yo, that could be me, that could be my brother, that could be my best friend. And knowing how close players are, you feel it very intimately, and so. When that happens, you're automatically thinking for him and praying for him and his family. And I don't know, I just thought, like, instead of just saying thoughts and prayers, like, let's actually do it for him. So just hoping to get some really, really good news here.
There have been some theories out there from medical personnel about what could have happened to cause this cardiac arrest event. And one of them is about taking a blow to a certain area in your chest and just an extremely unfortunately timed rhythm with the heart. Do you feel, Dan, like this may be caused to, I guess, re-examine some of the protective equipment that the players wear on their chest? It is an open area for NFL players in a lot of ways. Is that, or would that be too restrictive to, especially for someone like you, the throwing motion?
Yeah, I mean, that is so above my ability brain-wise. I think, I think that right now it's just like, let's just hope that Damar gets better and better and better and is able to like go back to a relatively good life, and whether football's a part of that is so far down the line. And then, what was the cause of this, and kind of figuring it out from there. And then if it means that, again, people that are significantly smarter than I feel that, changes being made are a positive, then that happens. But I certainly am not capable of trying to be that person.
Dan, when your playing days, did you ever see something on the field, an injury or anything
No.
that made it hard to continue playing or want to maybe not play the next week?
No, not anything close. I said this yesterday on live, like from a very early age when it comes to the sport of football, physical toughness and mental toughness become a necessity. There is no shot of playing that sport at a high level unless you're both. You cannot be physically soft. You cannot be mentally not strong. And from an early age, you start to build that up. And I use the phrase like you callous yourself. You callous yourself to your own physical pain, your own doubts and fears, the things that go through your mind, the pain that you feel both physically and mentally. You start to go through those really difficult and hard times as an athlete, and you start to take the fear and the doubt and the pain and turn it into strength and belief because you do these hard things over and over and over again. So when injury comes into play, you're just so callous to being like, oh man, that hurt, or that looks like it hurt, but move on. Like you're so conditioned to move on, move forward, go to the next. And I was talking with Marcus Spears about it yesterday. Like, yo, we've seen, we've watched guys tear ACLs in practice, roll an ankle, dislocate an ankle, break an arm, and they're just like, hey, move the huddle. And so you experience that so many times, you become calloused and numb to anything. And, when I saw what happened, my immediate thought was like, oh, he'll be okay. Like, he's a football player. He'll be okay. And so, no, I had never experienced anything like that on the football field that made you feel or ever made me feel like, oh, my gosh, I don't know if I could play next week or I'm fearful of – no, nothing like that because you become so callous to it all.
Well, with that in mind then, Dan, how do the Buffalo Bills move on? Do they?
Yeah, it's the hardest thing those players have ever done, that organization, and I'm sure coaches have ever done. I don't know if there's a blueprint because athletes are often creatures of habit, and the creature of habit and the routine that they're in allows them to play at the level that they do. But their routine is completely broken this week. And so, and this isn't like, hey, we have a Thursday night game because there's a set routine for that. And this isn't like we have a Monday night game because there's a set routine for that you can get back to habit. This is something completely different. And so how, like, I don't know how that they go about their week and feel like they're capable and able to go play in a game, a meaningful game for them, certainly with their season. Now, I don't know because it's Wednesday. So hopefully over the next day or two, there's some really great news about Damar, and you could even take a little bit of a deep breath. How athletes often can compartmentalize really well because it's a necessity in many ways. How well they can compartmentalize, but I don't know. I don't know how those guys go about playing in a game in 4 days without getting some awesome news coming out about Damar and his future.
So, Dan, to shift away from the Damar Hamlin conversation just a little bit, I do want to bring up something because I tweeted about it, about you a couple days ago, a spot that you had with Rex Ryan, in which he was saying that he felt that this season was the best coaching job that he saw from Bill Belichick, maybe in the history of his Patriots run. And I think your face said it all. While he was talking, and I guess what was your response to that, or have you thought more about that statement?
Yeah, I obviously I disagree with it. You know, I don't think that. I think the coaching job that he's done. First of all, I think Rex massively undervalues Kyle Duggar. You know, like because Rex went on to say, well, the only guy that would start on some of those Patriot teams of the past is Matthew Judon. While I agree with that Judon would be a star and a stud on those teams, like Kyle has become a stud as well. I think there's a Barmore would be on that team. There's multiple guys on that defense that Uche would be really good. So that's kind of where I disagree. I think their defense is a little bit more talented than Rex probably does. And the fact that their offense is so bad is in part because of the persons that have been placed with the stewardship of that offense, and that falls under Coach Belichick. So it's a good coaching job. They're not even in the playoffs unless I think they have to win to get in, if I'm correct. So like, I don't know if I'm sitting here saying it's the best coaching job of Bill Belichick's career. I could argue in many ways that where it's fallen well short.
I think you can argue in many ways it's on the bottom of his years of coaching, I would think. But my question is a little bit more tailored towards the NFL in general, Dan, and I think this is a insight that from you I'd really appreciate here. It seems like there's a starting quarterback talent drain going on in the NFL right now, certainly at the end of the year. And I know at the end of the year, a lot of guys are injured and there's a lot of, players who have to step up for that. But a lot of players just got flat out benched this year. What's your take on sort of the talent drain maybe is a little strong, but what's your take sort of on the current state of the starting quarterback in the NFL?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the guys that got benched or are struggling are guys that have had really good long careers.
Yeah.
And they changed teams. If we think of Matt Ryan in Indy, changed teams. Russell Wilson struggling in Denver, changed teams. Derek Carr didn't change teams, but has a new coach there. So, what's the correlation between those guys that have been good for a long time and either changed teams or got a new coach? Because the opposite happened for Brady and Stafford over the past 2 years in their high-level success. So, there's some of those veteran guys that have been really good players for a long period of time that for some reason it did not connect and register for their individual and team performance and success this season. I think some of the young kids, but then there's a Geno Smith, for example, that has been around a long time and, kind of lightning in a bottle. And then there's some young kids that were expected to take these massive jumps and didn't. Kyler was not taking a massive jump and obviously has suffered injury. Zach Wilson was relatively expected to take a pretty big jump and didn't. Trey Lance hurt. Mac Jones is probably taking a step back. So there's a lot of factors that go into play in that position. And sometimes I get crazy frustrated that we only look at that position as a singular, I'm a tennis player vacuum type of world. And I'll say it till I get done being on television. That position is the most dependent position in all of football. You can't point to me a good quarterback, great quarterback, and say that they have an awful offensive line and really bad performers and talent-wise and say they're producing at a high level unless it's like a flash in the pan. So really good quarterbacks need really good players around them.
All right. We'll leave it right there then. Dan Orlovsky, thanks so much for the time. Great to talk with you on a tough day and a tough subject.
Have a good week, guys.
All right. Thanks a lot.